Every city holds a heartbeat, a rhythm of life woven from dreams and struggles, triumphs and tears. And in the heart of our city, where the cobblestones remember footsteps of giants and every brick tells a tale of resilience, there once blossomed a love story that became more than just a romance. It became a symphony of hope, an anthem of what's possible, even when the world tries to whisper, "You're not enough." This isn't just a story about two people. It's a story about a community, about destiny, and about the unfinished melody of a promise. We're talking about Lena and Marcus, born barely 3 months apart in the same spirited neighborhood where front porches served as community forums and Sunday dinners were sacred rituals. Their families, deeply rooted in the city's rich history, knew each other, not just through casual acquaintance, but through generations of shared struggle and shared triumph. Lena's grandmother had marched for civil rights alongside Marcus's grandfather. Their parents had built businesses from the ground up, navigating systemic hurdles to carve out a space for their families. They understood, instinctively, that community wasn't just a place, it was a lifeline. From their earliest days, Lena and Marcus were inseparable. While other kids might drift from clique to clique, they were a gravitational force unto themselves. Lena, with her fiery spirit and an unshakable belief that every child deserved a safe space to dream, would often be found rallying her friends, even at age 7, to clean up the local playground, turning trash into treasure. She was a natural leader, already building bridges where others saw only gaps. And Marcus? He was her quiet observer, his eyes constantly searching, his hands always ready to sketch. While Lena organized, Marcus would sit nearby, his pencil dancing across paper, transforming their weathered streets into vibrant murals of hope, capturing the dignity in every face, the unspoken stories in every tired building. He'd often draw the broken swings in the park, but always with children's laughter painted around them, a testament to his belief that beauty could emerge from hardship. You see, for Lena and Marcus, growing up wasn't just about childhood games. It was about witnessing the disparities. They saw the underfunded schools in their district, the decaying infrastructure that stood in stark contrast to the gleaming high-rises downtown. These were not just abstract concepts. They were the realities of their neighbors, their friends. And instead of letting it breed resentment, it ignited something fierce within them. Marcus's early sketches weren't just art. They were silent protests, visual arguments for what their community deserved. Lena's endless energy wasn't just youthful exuberance. It was a focused determination to build a future where those disparities didn't exist. They were two halves of a whole, one the activist, the other the artist, both driven by an unwavering love for their people and their place. Their bond wasn't just forged in laughter. It was tempered in the fires of shared injustices. I remember one time when they were about 10, a favorite community garden, run by a beloved elder, was threatened with demolition for a new commercial development. The adults felt helpless. But Lena and Marcus, they organized a Save Our Garden campaign, not with picket signs, but with drawings from Marcus showing what the garden meant to the community, and Lena knocking on every door, collecting signatures, telling stories. They didn't save the garden that time. Some battles are too big for even the brightest kids. But they learned a vital lesson. Even if you don't win every fight, you never stop fighting for what's right. And that shared fight, that collective ache, cemented their connection in a way no casual friendship ever could. They built a trust that ran deeper than words, a quiet understanding that no matter what life threw at them, they would face it together. This was their foundation, not privilege, but purpose, not just love, but a shared calling. And as they stepped from the innocence of childhood into the complex world of adolescence, that foundation would be tested, refined, and ultimately would lead them to a choice that would define not just their lives, but the very legacy of their beloved city. As Lena and Marcus stepped across the threshold from childhood innocence into the dizzying complexities of adolescence, their bond deepened, but so did the whispers. Not just the whispers of their hearts, but the murmurs of a world that often doubted young love, especially love forged in the crucible of ambition and circumstance, the very qualities that made them inseparable. Lena's fiercely independent spirit, Marcus's quiet intensity, began to define their individual paths, and with those paths came new challenges. Lena, a force of nature even in her teenage years, knew her passion for community building needed a powerful voice. She secretly pored over brochures for prestigious universities, not just in their city, but across the nation. She envisioned herself not just attending, but leading, transforming institutions, bringing vital resources back to the streets that raised her. But there was a quiet fear that gnawed at her. Would chasing these grand dreams make her seem like she was abandoning her roots? Would her community, which had poured so much into her, see her as turning her back on them? It was a silent struggle, a solitary battle against the expectations of loyalty versus the pull of destiny. Meanwhile, Marcus, with his sketchbook as his constant companion, wrestled with his own demons of self-doubt. His talent was undeniable, his murals on abandoned walls already starting to draw attention. But could art truly change the world? Could a brushstroke fight systemic inequality? He grappled with imposter syndrome, the feeling that his quiet nature didn't fit the mold of a powerful advocate. He saw Lena so clearly marching towards her goals, and sometimes he felt his own path, though vital, seemed less immediate. There were moments, sharp and poignant, when these individual struggles created friction between them. I remember one summer evening, after a particularly heated community meeting where Lena had passionately argued for new youth programs, she came home exhausted but exhilarated. Marcus, however, had spent the day sketching a dilapidated old theater, imagining it as a vibrant cultural hub. "Lena," he said, "sometimes I feel like you're so focused on the now, on the immediate fight, that you forget the soul of our community. We need beauty, too. We need art to heal." Lena, tired, snapped back, "And how will art feed a hungry child, Marcus? How will a pretty picture open doors for those who are shut out?" For a moment, the air crackled with unspoken tension. It was a classic head versus heart debate, a clash of their inherent natures. But that's the beauty of their bond. Instead of letting it fester, they sought to understand. Marcus showed Lena his sketches for the theater, detailing how it could provide jobs, create a platform for local talent, and uplift spirits. Lena explained the immediate, urgent need for resources, for tangible support. And in that honest, vulnerable exchange, they realized something profound. Their paths weren't divergent, they were complementary. His art would give voice to the very dreams she fought to make real. Her advocacy would create the space where his art could flourish. This wasn't a compromise. It was a revelation. They had always been partners, but now they understood the unique power each brought to their shared mission. This dynamic became the bedrock of their continued growth. They were each other's fiercest cheerleaders, navigating the competitive world of academia and professional life. Lena pursued her law degree with a laser focus on public interest, her late nights fueled by video calls with Marcus, who was concurrently building a reputation as a visionary urban artist. He'd send her photos of his latest murals splashed across forgotten corners of the city, each one a testament to hope and resilience. She'd send him drafts of her legal briefs, asking for his artistic perspective on how to make complex arguments more impactful. Their love wasn't just about emotional connection. It was a shared intellectual and spiritual pursuit, a constant reaffirmation of their commitment not just to each other, but to a cause far greater than themselves. Then came the day. Under the vast open sky of a newly revitalized community park, a project they had both tirelessly advocated for, Marcus took Lena's hand. He didn't whisk her away to some exotic locale. He brought her to the heart of their city, to a place they had helped breathe new life into. Beneath a vibrant new mural he had just completed, a sweeping depiction of their community's journey from struggle to triumph, he knelt. His voice, usually quiet, resonated with conviction. "Lena, we've built so much together. Not just our lives, but our dreams for this city. There's only one more thing I want to build. Our future, as husband and wife, and as partners in everything." It was more than a proposal. It was a recommitment to their shared purpose. This was the beautiful irony. While the world often tells you that young love can't survive the grind of ambition, that it must wither under the weight of adult responsibilities, Lena and Marcus defied every expectation. They proved that when love is rooted in shared values, in mutual respect, and in a purpose greater than oneself, it doesn't just endure, it thrives. Their story became a living testament to the idea that sometimes the greatest strength isn't just in what you overcome, but in who you become and who you bring with you on that incredible journey. They were ready to build their future brick by purposeful brick, art stroke by art stroke, hand in loving hand. The air was electric, not just with the buzz of hundreds of excited guests, but with a palpable sense of triumph. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a coronation. A community's collective dream, years in the making, finally unfolding under the vast open sky. Lena and Marcus had planned a celebration that was more than just lavish. It was a living tapestry of their heritage, a bold declaration of their hope for the future, woven into every single detail. They chose the old Capitol building, a historic landmark nestled in the heart of their city, a place they had fought tirelessly to preserve and repurpose. Its grand columns, once silent witnesses to political battles, now stood sentinel over a celebration of unity. They'd argued passionately for its restoration, envisioning it as a beacon for their community, and now it was the sacred ground for their vows. Every local artisan was involved, the caterers serving soul food elevated to an art form, each dish telling a story of comfort and survival. The florists weaving vibrant native blooms into breathtaking arrangements that mirrored Marcus's murals. The musicians, a soulful blend of jazz, gospel, and contemporary R&B, making sure every note resonated with the spirit of their people. Lena's gown, a masterpiece of ivory silk, was more than just a dress. It was a collaboration with a local seamstress, adorned with intricate, hand-stitched patterns inspired by West African textiles, each motif a nod to her ancestry, a silent prayer for strength and prosperity. It was a testament to her vision of fusing tradition with innovation, a true haute couture piece born from the very streets she championed. Marcus, in his impeccably tailored suit, wore a subtle lapel pin, a tiny silver rendering of the very community garden they had fought to save as children. It was a private reminder of their roots, a quiet commitment to the ground they stood on. The aisle felt like a bridge between generations. Lena, walking arm in arm with her father, a man whose eyes held the wisdom of decades fighting for civil rights, felt the weight of every ancestor, every struggle, every sacrifice that had led her to this moment. When she reached Marcus, their hands intertwined, a silent current of understanding passing between them. They stood before their community, not just as a bride and groom, but as living symbols of what resilient love could achieve. Their vows, their vows were etched not just into their hearts, but into the very fabric of the city. Lena spoke of her promise to Marcus, but also to the next generation, the forgotten, the unheard. She vowed to use her voice, her education, her very breath to create the youth center they had dreamed of, to build a safe haven where every child could flourish. Marcus, his voice thick with emotion, spoke of his commitment to Lena, but also to painting a world where every soul sees its own magnificent worth. He promised to use his art, his vision, to illuminate the beauty and resilience of their people, to ensure their stories were seen, honored, and never erased. It wasn't just a union of two souls. It was a sacred covenant with their community, a pledge to build a legacy that would echo for decades. As they sealed their vows with a kiss, the old Capitol building erupted in a joyous roar. Confetti rained down, laughter filled the air, and the soulful music swelled to a crescendo. It was a collective exhale, a moment of pure, unadulterated triumph. You could feel it in your bones. This wasn't just a happy ending. It was a powerful beginning. The dream, for so long a whispered hope, was now a vibrant, tangible reality. And then, just as the last echoes of celebration lingered in the air, came the surprise. Lena's father, a man of quiet dignity and immense foresight, stepped forward. He raised a hand, and the buzzing conversation quieted. "My dearest Lena, my wonderful Marcus," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "You have built your dreams with your own hands, brick by brick, brushstroke by brushstroke. Now, it's time to see them from a new perspective, a perspective of boundless possibility. A perspective of boundless possibility." He gestured towards the Capitol's grand entrance, where, against the twilight sky, sat a magnificent vintage biplane, its polished fuselage gleaming under the last rays of the sun. It was an antique beauty, a symbol of daring and soaring aspiration, something truly out of the ordinary for a wedding gift. "A private tour," he announced, "of our beloved city, from above, to see the future you're building and the legacy you're creating spread out beneath you." And Lena gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, tears of joy welling in her eyes. Marcus's face, usually composed, broke into a wide, disbelieving smile. They rushed towards the plane, their hearts soaring even before the engines roared to life. They had built their dreams from the ground up, with their feet firmly planted in their community. But this was a chance to see the full expanse of their world, to touch the sky. It felt like destiny, a fitting capstone to a day that had embodied every dream they had ever dared to whisper. They stepped into that biplane, full of hope, their wedding attire still pristine, ready to embrace the boundless future stretching before them. What they didn't know, what no one could have known, was that sometimes the most beautiful gifts carry the most unforeseen prices, and that the view from the top, while breathtaking, can also hide the deadliest of shadows. The symphony of their hope was about to reach its most unexpected, most shattering crescendo. As Lena and Marcus settled into the cockpit of the vintage biplane, the thrill was almost unbearable. They buckled in, their silk and fine wool wedding attire feeling oddly out of place against the weathered leather seats. The roar of the engine filled the air, a powerful symphony that promised adventure. Lena squeezed Marcus's hand, her eyes wide with unadulterated joy. "Can you believe this?" she whispered, her voice barely audible above the engine. "We're actually flying." And then they were airborne. The city, their beloved city, spread out beneath them like a living map. The meticulously restored old Capitol building, where moments ago they had pledged their lives to each other, now looked like a tiny, intricate jewel. Marcus pointed out the sprawling community park where he'd proposed. The subtle patterns of his murals, barely visible from this height, now bathed in the golden glow of the setting sun. "Look, Lena," he shouted over the engine, his voice filled with awe. "Our future, from the clouds!" They saw the familiar streets, the tiny houses that held generations of stories, the very sidewalks where they had played as children. From this vantage point, the challenges seemed to shrink, replaced by an overwhelming sense of possibility. They talked excitedly about the youth center, envisioning its roof, the children's laughter echoing through its halls, the murals Marcus would paint on its exterior. They whispered about their own future children, about teaching them the resilience of their ancestors, about raising them in a community they had helped to rebuild. This was it, the boundless future laid out before them, shimmering with all the promise they had worked so hard for. But then, almost imperceptibly at first, the smooth flight began to waver, a gentle bump, then another. The pilot, a man named Captain Elijah Vance, a charismatic figure with a seemingly boundless enthusiasm for vintage aircraft, offered a reassuring smile over his shoulder. "Just a bit of turbulence, folks. Nothing to worry about. Happens all the time." Lena and Marcus exchanged a fleeting glance, their smiles faltering slightly, but they quickly dismissed it. It was a vintage plane after all. A little shake was probably normal. But the turbulence escalated. The biplane jostled more violently. The joyous shouts of Lena and Marcus turned to nervous laughter. Captain Vance's reassurances grew more strained, his voice losing its confident edge. "Strong crosswinds, that's all. Just a little tricky to manage this old girl in these conditions." He wrestled with the controls, his knuckles white. And then the true horror began to unfold. A jarring, sickening lurch. Not a bump, but a wrenching tear. A guttural groan from the plane's structure, and then the piercing shriek of an alarm, thin and desperate, cutting through the engine's roar. Captain Vance's face, once jovial, was now contorted in a mask of pure terror. His eyes flicked to a complex panel of dials, and his breath hitched. He frantically tried to make a radio call. "Mayday! Mayday! This is Vance. Flight 771. Structural failure. I repeat, structural failure. Control compromised." Lena and Marcus froze, their hearts pounding in their chests. "Structural failure?" Lena whispered, her voice barely a breath. This wasn't just a strong wind. This was something fundamentally wrong. A chilling realization began to dawn. This beautiful, vintage gift, this symbol of their upward trajectory, was concealing a deadly secret. This wasn't an act of God. This was a flaw, a profound, systemic flaw. Captain Vance, still wrestling with the controls, suddenly let out a strangled cry. "The main strut! It's... oh, God!" He wrestled the yoke, trying desperately to keep the plane level, but it was fighting him, fighting gravity, fighting its own crumbling integrity. The biplane wasn't just being buffeted by wind, it was unraveling from within. The whispers of doubt that had once haunted Lena and Marcus about their own paths now screamed a terrifying truth about the very vehicle carrying their dreams. The grand gesture, the symbol of aspiration, was a ticking time bomb, and someone, somewhere, had chosen to ignore the ticking. They were no longer soaring, they were falling, not into a storm, but into a terrifying vortex of a fatal flaw that had been ignored, perhaps concealed. This wasn't about fate, it was about human choices. And in those terrifying moments, as the world spun madly around them, Lena and Marcus understood with a chilling clarity that some dreams, when built on unstable foundations or entrusted to careless hands, can crumble in the most devastating of ways. The future they had seen from above was dissolving, replaced by the terrifying, inevitable descent towards a shocking, brutal end. The world became a blur of tearing metal and a deafening roar. The biplane, once a symbol of boundless aspiration, was now a tormented beast, screaming its last. Lena and Marcus were thrown violently against the restraints, their breaths caught in their throats. The joyous shouts of moments ago were replaced by raw, primal screams. Every ounce of hope, every dream they had just glimpsed from above, was being ripped away, piece by agonizing piece. In those milliseconds, as the ground rushed up to meet them, instinct took over. Marcus, the quiet artist, whose hands were usually for creation, reacted with a ferocity born of pure love. As the plane bucked and lurched, he twisted, instinctively throwing his body over Lena, shielding her with every fiber of his being. He had always been her protector, her steady anchor. Now, in the face of inevitable destruction, he became her living shield. Lena felt the crushing impact, the splintering wood, the tearing metal, but above all, she felt the unyielding strength of Marcus's body, absorbing the brunt of the unimaginable force. His artist's hands, the hands that painted dreams on city walls, were now brutally twisted, his arms locked around her, a final desperate embrace. He said, "He can't. He can't." She said honestly, "My art is one of the inspirations I have drawn from ever since I was young." She said, "My art is..." Then, silence. A ringing, terrifying silence, broken only by the crackle of distant flames and the ragged gasp of Lena's own breath. Darkness consumed her for a moment, then flickered back into a horrifying reality. Her head throbbed, every muscle screamed in protest, but she was alive. Barely. She stirred, her limbs heavy, her vision blurry through the smoke. She saw debris, twisted metal, shattered glass, and then she saw Marcus. He was lying partially over her, unmoving. A cold dread, far deeper than any physical pain, seized her. "Marcus?" she croaked, her voice raw, barely a whisper. There was no response. Her heart, which moments ago had been soaring, now plunged into an abyss of ice. With a superhuman effort, fueled by a terror she had never known, Lena began to move. Every movement was agony. She pushed against the wreckage, pulling herself free, desperate to reach him. Her hands, still trembling, found his. They were limp. "Marcus, please," she begged, tears streaming down her soot-stained face. She tried to pull him, to shift the heavy debris that pinned him. The heat of the flames was growing, licking at the edges of their shattered world. He stirred, a faint, almost imperceptible groan escaping his lips. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused, but then they found hers. A glimmer of recognition, a flicker of that unwavering love shone through the pain. "Lena," he rasped, his voice barely a breath. You're safe." His hand weakly reached for her face, his thumb brushing away a tear, and then his eyes drifted, not to the fire, not to the wreckage, but to something only he could see, something beyond the chaos. The center, he whispered, his voice fading. "Finish it. For us. For them." And then, with a last, desperate, loving sigh, he spoke the words that would echo in her heart for eternity, the final brushstroke of his unfinished symphony. "I love you." His eyes, so full of life, of artistry, of purpose, fluttered shut. "No! Marcus, no!" Lena screamed, her voice a ragged, primal shriek that tore through the night. She grabbed him, holding him tight, shaking him, begging him to wake up. But even as she desperately clung to his lifeless form, the true horror of their situation revealed itself. The unstable ground beneath the wreckage, weakened by the impact, began to give way, slowly at first, then with increasing speed. The mangled remains of the biplane, their twisted metal prison, started to slide down the steep, rocky embankment towards the churning waters below. Lena scrambled, digging her nails into the loose earth, screaming for help that would never come. But it was useless. The unforgiving earth swallowed them whole. The last thing she saw was the flickering flames, a cruel, final testament to the dreams that had been so brutally, so senselessly extinguished. The crash wasn't just an accident. It was a devastating testament to how easily negligence can shatter the most profound and hopeful of human connections. It was the unraveling of a dream. An unfinished symphony silenced before its final, triumphant note. High above, at the magnificent old Capitol building, the echoes of laughter died, replaced by a sound that would forever haunt the memories of hundreds. A collective, gut-wrenching wail. The news. A monstrous, unthinkable truth. tore through the elegant reception like a wildfire. Gasps turned to sobs, disbelief shattered into raw, agonizing grief. The air, once vibrant with celebration, now hung heavy with unspoken questions, with the chilling reality that happiness could be snatched away in a single, cruel breath. Mothers collapsed into the arms of fathers, their faces contorted with horror. Friends who had just toasted Lena and Marcus's future clung to each other, their hands trembling, their eyes mirroring the profound shock. The wedding, in an instant, had become a wake. A community, united in joy, was now bound by an unimaginable sorrow. Lena's father, a pillar of strength, a man who had faced down prejudice and injustice his entire life, stood frozen. The weight of his daughter's death, the terrifying realization that his gift had become the instrument of her demise, crashed down on him like a force no human could withstand. His wife's anguished cry, a sound of utter despair, echoed through the night, a raw, primal expression of a mother's broken heart. Marcus's parents, once so full of pride and hope, now held on to each other as if their own hearts had been torn from their chests. The dream, so vibrant, so painstakingly built, had been reduced to a single horrifying night. Down below, in the stark, quiet aftermath of the tragedy, first responders worked with grim efficiency. The wreckage was severe, scattered across the treacherous, rocky terrain. There were no survivors. The vintage biplane, so elegant in its design, had utterly disintegrated upon impact. But the tragedy wasn't just in the impact. It was in the revelation of why. The investigation, swift and unyielding, peeled back layers of devastating truth. It wasn't merely a sudden gust of wind. It was a documented, but ignored, structural flaw in the vintage aircraft. A critical bolt, an essential support strut, had shown signs of fatigue, had been red flagged in previous maintenance reports, but had been dismissed, perhaps due to cost-cutting, perhaps due to sheer negligence. The flight company, a smaller outfit known for its unique vintage experiences, had skimped on crucial safety checks, gambling with lives for profit. Captain Elijah Vance, the charismatic pilot who had just hours ago offered reassuring smiles, had made desperate calls for structural failure. He was aware of the plane's vulnerabilities, yet had been pressured, or perhaps chose, to fly it anyway. The unforeseen winds were merely the catalyst that exposed a hidden, man-made flaw. This wasn't just a random accident. It was a consequence of shortcuts, of a system that sometimes prioritizes profit over human life, a betrayal of trust that resonated deeply within a community that had so often fought against systemic disregard. Amidst the chaos, a single delicate piece of fabric, impossibly, had been torn free from the inferno. Lena's wedding veil, a whisper of ivory silk, fluttered gently on the wind, a ghostly sentinel against the rugged mountain. It danced for a moment, a delicate silken ghost, before settling softly among the wild flowers growing in the cracks of the cliff face. Untouched by the flame, it remained there, a silent, poignant memorial to a love that burned so bright, to a dream that was so profoundly deserved, but was never meant to fully unfold. But then, a twist, a miracle amidst the wreckage. One of the rescue workers, meticulously searching through the debris, found her. Lena, alive, severely injured, clinging to life but alive. She had been shielded by Marcus's body, his final act of boundless love and sacrifice. His broad shoulders, his artistic hands, had become her last desperate shield. Her recovery would be agonizing, a brutal testament to the physical and emotional scars left by that night, but she would survive. And with her survival came the terrifying yet resolute understanding of Marcus's last whispered words. The center, finish it. For us. For them. The devastating truth of the accident, the betrayal of the flawed aircraft, ignited a new fire within her. Her purpose, though reshaped by unbearable loss, was now clearer, sharper than ever. This wasn't just about grieving. It was about reckoning. In the hushed aftermath, after the initial shock and the agonizing grief, a quiet resolve began to stir in the heart of the community. They had lost Lena and Marcus, their vibrant young stars, in a tragedy that wasn't just cruel fate, but a brutal consequence of human negligence. The loss was immeasurable, the pain searing, but within that pain, a seed of resilience, deeply sown by Lena and Marcus themselves, began to sprout. Lena's journey back was arduous. Physically, her body was a roadmap of trauma, but it was the invisible wounds that ran deepest. The silence of Marcus' absence was deafening. There were days she didn't want to go on, days the sheer weight of what happened threatened to crush her. But then, in the quiet moments, his last words would echo in her mind, a sacred promise. The center, finish it, for us, for them. It was a beacon in her darkest hour, a purpose that demanded her survival. And the community, broken but not defeated, rallied. They had witnessed Lena and Marcus's love, their unwavering commitment, their dream for a better future. They knew what Marcus had whispered, inspired by Lena's miraculous survival and the raw, undeniable injustice of the accident. They refused to let their dream die with them. Donations poured in, volunteers offered their time, local artists contributed their talents. The dream of the youth center, once Lena and Marcus's, became a shared, collective mission. Weeks turned into months. Lena, though still healing, became an unstoppable force. The girl who had once organized playground cleanups now led furious charge against corporate negligence. She became a vocal advocate for aviation safety, working tirelessly with legal teams to expose the hidden flaws in the flight company's operations. The lawsuit wasn't just about money. It was about accountability, about ensuring that no other community, no other family would suffer from such preventable betrayals. She channeled her grief into action, her voice ringing with the passion that Marcus had always seen in her. She honored his memory not just with tears, but with tenacious, unwavering fight. And Marcus, his art too, refused to be silenced. Among his personal belongings, carefully tucked away, a large, unfinished canvas was discovered. It was a mural, half completed, depicting the very youth center they had envisioned, children's faces alive with joy, vibrant colors exploding against a backdrop of hope, the community elders watching over them with pride. It was his unfinished symphony, a visual legacy of what they intended to build. The community took up his brush. Local artists, inspired by his vision, meticulously completed the mural, working from his sketches and notes. It became a living, breathing testament to Marcus's genius and a powerful symbol of collective healing. The mural now graces the main wall of the Lena and Marcus Community Hope Center, a beacon of light in the very neighborhood they loved. Children now laugh and learn in its classrooms. Its art studios buzz with creativity. Its gardens bloom with life. Every time a child enters that center, they walk under Marcus's painted sky, a sky that reminds them to dream big, but also of the resilience it takes to build those dreams. So, they say love is fragile. They say happiness can be snatched away in an instant. And yes, in the face of unspeakable tragedy, Lena and Marcus's symphony of love was unfinished. But some melodies, some harmonies, are too powerful to be silenced. Their story isn't just about a tragic end. It's about a profound beginning. It's about how two young souls, deeply rooted in their community, defied expectations, pursued their dreams, and ultimately left behind a legacy that continues to bloom, stronger and more vibrant than ever, forged in the crucible of both joy and unimaginable loss. Their story reminds us that even when the path is broken, the journey isn't over. That resilience isn't just about bouncing back. It's about building forward, and that sometimes the greatest monuments to love aren't made of stone, but of the lives you touch, the dreams you inspire, and the unwavering commitment to a future that, no matter the cost, always holds the promise of a new, beautiful song. The Unfinished Symphony of Lena and Marcus. Its melody echoes in every life touched by the Hope Center, in every act of justice demanded, in every dream that continues to soar. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories of resilience, unexpected triumphs, and life-changing lessons. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear this powerful message. We believe in your strength, and we're here to share stories that inspire it. Until next time, guard your peace fiercely and live authentically.